You are Locked On Bulls Postcast, part of Locked On Sports Chicago on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Bulls Postcast here on the Locked On Sports Chicago YouTube channel. My name's Joe George. You find me on Twitter at JoeGeorge92, Instagram, TikTok at JoeGeorge Radio. The Bulls get the win 139-126 over the New York Knicks on D-Rose night. Really cool night, which we'll talk about. We're going to spend a good amount of time talking about Derrick Rose night because, yes, the Bulls won, and thankfully on a night in front of Derrick and in front of all these Bulls players that we grew up loving and watching, especially if you're around my age. I'm 33, and this is kind of your era of Bulls basketball. So seeing, Luol Deng and Joakim Noah and Taj Gibson, even in the photos of seeing Brian Scalabrine, who flew in this morning, John Calipari's there. There's so much good stuff to talk about that we'll get to in this show. But a really, really good win for the Bulls because they battled in the first half, took off in the second half. We'll talk about that first. We'll talk about Coby White and Zach LaVine just going scorched earth in this game where both these guys played really, really good basketball. And Coby White did a lot of what we've been looking for, but also the stuff that he's been doing this year. Finally, just this is one of those nights where he was heat checking left and right and things were just rolling for him. And then at the end, we'll talk about Derrick Rose night and what that meant. Thabo Sefolosha was there too. Honestly, they were showing some of the photos, and no offense to these guys, they look old. It was trying to put faces with names. I'm I don't remember. I know the names, but trying to see what they look like now. Couldn't remember who half these guys were just by looking at photos of them today. But so cool to see so many of Derrick's former teammates there. I kind of wish they just retired his jersey tonight. They will do that next season. I guess they're gonna milk this thing for as much as they can. I don't blame them with the typical product that they gave us. But tonight's product was very good. This is what you want from the Bulls after the last two games that have been kind of disastrous, where you have to go to overtime to beat the Hornets. You lose your last game versus the Washington Wizards. This is the kind of game that you're looking for the Bulls, and it's kind of talking about what we talked about in the last postcast show of where the Bulls play down to their competition and they play up to the good teams. And they did that, against the New York Knicks tonight. They also did something that was really positive. Well, they didn't collapse. They're in a very similar position in this game than they were the Atlanta Hawks game in the fourth quarter, and they didn't let it go. But look, the first half, the Knicks are getting these 8-9 point leads. And yeah, it ends up being a 9-point deficit at the end of the first half, and because the Knicks went on that final push there at the end of the second quarter. But the Bulls early on, they were battling in this game. They were going back and forth, and really, tightening these runs that were happening. You were getting it from a little bit of everyone in this game. I mean, Lonzo Ball had some good plays. Josh Giddey, Zach LaVine, and Coby White were good in the first half. But then in the second half, this team was excellent. I mean, they outscored the Knicks 41-17 in the third quarter. So they're down by 9 going into the third quarter, and all of a sudden they come out and they're just feeling it. Zach LaVine's got 20 at the end of the first half. Kobe's got 15. But they go on a 15-4 run in the third right away, capped off by Alonzo 3. They kept extending that one. We saw the Josh Giddey Alonzo lob for a dunk. So the second game in a row in which Lonzo Ball gets a dunk, so he hasn't had any in 3 years. He has 2 in his last 2 games. That play was excellent. That was a phenomenal play from Lonzo Ball, or from Josh Giddey to Lonzo Ball. That was a lot of fun to see them in transition and really connect on that. Zach LaVine had maybe my favorite play of the night, that little shimmy thing he did in the paint, a foot and a half away from the bucket to juke out one of the Knicks defenders for the layup. And then you had the Julian Phillips steal and dunk that gave the Bulls a 6-point lead. So they were down big, and all of a sudden they're running back into this thing. They ran that 15-4 run up to a 20-4 run. They had a 9-point lead. Coby White hits a big 3 at one point to put them up 104-89 there in the third quarter. That was at the very end of the third quarter. And look, he had that that buzzer beater 3 at the end of the second half. And not that it mattered, but that was kind of the signal that things were turning for the offense at that point, where he hits that buzzer beater at the end of the half, and he just continued to hit big shots in the third quarter. And look, and then in the fourth, Karl-Anthony Towns, he was phenomenal tonight. You saw why the New York Knicks did make this trade. He ends up with 44 points on the night. At one point in the fourth quarter, so he ended up with more than this. But when the Knicks got the ball, the lead back down to 6 for the Bulls with 6 minutes left to go in the quarter, Karl-Anthony Towns already had 17 points in the quarter. And that was really where you're like, okay, is this going to be the Atlanta game where they collapse, or are they going to answer? And they answered in a huge way. They immediately respond with a 13-2 run that puts them up 132 to 117, and that was ball game at that point. So they really, on offense, did a phenomenal job in this game, really in every kind of facet you would want them to do. They were very good in the paint in the second half. They were really good from the three-point line overall in the game. I mean, look, they shot 54%. They were 20 of 37. Considering how bad it's been the last couple games, just a refreshing sight to not see like a number in the low threes or twos in that percentage marker there. So 54% from the three-point line. They had 36 assists in this game. They had 13 turnovers, which like that's not their worst night. The Knicks did have 19 points off those 13 turnovers, so like that could have been a huge game changer, but a lot of that happened in the first half. So it really was a tale of two halves. Like the first half, like they're just kind of battling, staying in this game as much as they possibly can. And then the second half, the offense just absolutely went nuts. As Zach says here in the chat too, the Bulls' help defense on Karl Towns was atrocious. Well, this is one of those where it's like, if you're expecting good help defense all the time from the Bulls defense at this point, I think we can move past that. I think we can move past the idea of them having good help defense. But besides Karl Towns, like going berserk, and Jalen Brunson having a good night himself, he had 33 points, which is cool for him. Like on a personal note, like you heard Derrick Rose, if you're watching the game and listening to the broadcast, which was also nice to have Neil Funk back on for this game. That was a really cool treat that I did not know that was happening before the game. But that was cool for Jalen Brunson, honestly, to have like that kind of game in front of Derrick. I've watched Jalen Brunson myself play basketball since he was a junior in high school when he scored like 52 points, I think it was, in the semifinals of the Illinois State playoffs against Whitney Young and Jaleel Okafor. I mean, it was just a cool night for everything. It was the perfect team to do this. I know it's because you were 1 for Chicago, 4 for the Knicks, and then 25 obviously at Simeon. But to have Tibbs there and Jalen Brunson, these two people that are so important to either Chicago as young basketball players or Tibbs, the coach, and then all the legends there, and just to cap it off with the victory tonight. It's funny, like I think earlier in the season, it's like those 20-point comebacks would be the highlight of the season. This is the highlight of the season. I don't think there's going to be a better Bulls victory from a fan perspective, from a team perspective, honestly, than what they had tonight. Just to honor someone that, for someone like me, is so important to why I'm a basketball fan. And then to have that performance on top of that was just a really cool night. So I'm really glad they, when they're down 9 at the end of the first half, I'm like, they're going to lose on Derrick Rose night. Like that's a cardinal sin. Like you can't retire on, you can't lose when people's jerseys are getting retired. You can't do that, or when they're just being honored. So next year, when they're retiring Derrick's jersey, which we'll learn more about, I'm sure, as time has come, but quickly, of like when that's actually going to happen, when he's the 5th jersey that's up in the rafters. You got to get a win that night too. But for tonight, it was a good win for the Bulls. It was a great win because of everything that happened before the day started, everything at halftime, even just the montages, like they're showing like all the best moments from his career. So all of that combined, like just a great win for the Bulls. I really enjoyed this one, and I'll say it again, like I think that's going to end up being the highlight of the Bulls season, is in from start to finish, really what, even yesterday, the pop-up shop that Derrick Rose had, where there was like a ton of people just like waiting in line to get pictures with Derrick. So really, best one of the season, for sure. Not sure it's going to top that, especially with what could come here around the corner with the trade deadline. Let's talk more about Coby White and Zach LaVine, because they went scorched earth in this game. Coby White was phenomenal. Zach LaVine was the best version of himself, like we've been seeing this year, where he's just playing all-around good basketball. We'll get into that next year on the Locked On Bulls postcast on the Locked On Sports Chicago YouTube channel.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. I've been telling you guys for a while that this is a leg up that FanDuel is giving you that a lot of other betting sites do not, or sports books do not give you, to be able to have everything at your fingertips, to make an informed bet on the same page where you place your bets, It just streamlines the whole entire process for you. So just visit FanDuel.com today to join. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's $150 that FanDuel is giving you for just placing and winning your first $5 bet. So make a smart bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
All right, so Zach LaVine and Coby White went off tonight. So they had 20 points. Zach had 20 points at halftime. Coby had 15. They both end up with 33 points on the night. Vooch himself had another good night, another double-double. Continues to play like an all-star. 22 points, 12 rebounds for Vooch in this one. But Zach LaVine, 33 points, 13 of 21 from the field, 3 of 6 from the three-point line. Josh Giddey, 3 of 3 also from the three-point line. So, like, when it rains, it pours for the Bulls. Like, it's so funny, like, just, like, looking at the box score, even just, like, after the game as you're watching it, like, how bad it's been. But then to see Josh Giddey, 3 for 3, Zach LaVine, 3 for 6. Coby White, 9 for 11 from the three-point line tonight. Only 2 buckets from the field and only 2 free throws. So all of his points come from the three-point line. This is where the Coby White discussion that like we've kind of been having on this show and Bulls fans have been talking about, and Stacey King's been talking about on the broadcast, about like where he needs to attack more. This is the night where that goes out the window. That when he is having these nights and he is hitting transition threes, he had a couple of them where in past games, it's one of those where you're like, why are you taking that? But when they're going in like they are tonight, I'm not going to complain about Coby White. Like, I'm just going to recognize the stellar game that he had. And even though most of his shots, like I said, 9 of 11 for the three-point line, are, going in, and he's still attacking the basket in this game. And I think that's what's been missing with Coby White is he doesn't have a lot of balance always. And like not like tonight, like yes, there's way more three-pointers than there is field goals. I mean, he only takes 17 shots on the night, 11 of them were threes. But like he still was in the game attacking the paint and distributing the ball to other guys and even if he was just going up and getting fouled or whatever, like you saw that balance for him. And this is where when he can make the threes, when he can be money like this is the Coby White that we want to see forever as a Bull. Like as long as he's a Bull, like obviously you're never going to expect a guy to shoot 9 for 11 from the three-point line all the time. Like that's a crazy expectation, of course. But like to be hitting some of these transition threes is so important to what he wants to do. Because what we have to realize, and like I think what I've had to realize is like these last couple shows specifically, like as we've been doing them, is that he's not going to change. Like Kobe's going to be Kobe. He's going to take pull-up threes. He's going to be ripping them in transition. And when they're not going in, it's going to be super frustrating. When they do go in, it's going to be awesome like it was tonight. He just has to find a way to get them to be more consistent and more frequently going in so they're not bad shots. And if he can do that, like this can be kind of encapsulates like what Coby White, the basketball player, can still be. And then you have Zach LaVine, who like I'll continue to say this really is the best basketball he's played as a member of the Chicago Bulls. Like his overall basketball IQ feels like it's just gone up a ton for Zach LaVine. And it continues to be a showcase for other teams potentially, like if they are going to trade him, which still feels like the likely conclusion of what happens in like 32 days or whatever the trade deadline is away from today, January 4th. But this is where it's like it's almost frustrating because like for years I've been wanting this from him, but this is what you need from him. Where like he is attacking in the paint, he's hitting his mid-range shot, he's hitting from the outside. He's just doing everything that we always knew that Zach LaVine was capable of. And we talked about this on the last show, just like, potentially changing their starting lineup if things are going to continue to be this poorly and things like that. But we saw a lot of Lonzo also with just like the starting group with Coby White on the bench. And I still think like that's when the Bulls, like when Coby wasn't going scorched earth, were really playing their best basketball, specifically in the first half. Like when the Knicks were going on these runs and going up 8 or 9, and then the Bulls were having to battle back in, like having Lonzo out on the court like that with Giddey and Patrick Williams and Vooch and LaVine still is really when they were playing their absolute best basketball in this game. So this was just a really good collective team performance, and really besides Karl-Anthony Towns and what he did offensively, like it's really nothing to complain about. Because even Jalen Brunson's 33, like are a quiet 33. Like, I know like that's a kind of a cheesy saying that happens in sports, but like Jalen, I didn't realize he had 33 points in this game, especially when he's out of the game for so much. And it's kind of funny too on Derrick Rose night of all things to like watch the New York Knicks being tired and gassed, and because they're playing a back-to-back, and Tibbs just makes them play so many minutes all the time. And it's like, it's just where like we're back, and he just wasn't coaching the Bulls. But like, this is what it used to be with the Bulls, is they play back-to-back, and Luol Deng or Jimmy Butler or Taj, like these guys would look a little gassed. So yes, you catch the Knicks on an off night in terms of their energy level, but I'll take it. Like, this is one of those where like I think as a fan, for like my sanity after the last 2 games and watching them, like this was also just like desperately needed. And I would imagine the Bulls players kind of feel the same way, that just after the performances against the Hornets and Wizards to have this level of performance, they just have to find a way to, if they can just play like with this energy all the time, and not even like the success of the 3-point shooting. We're not going to ask them to shoot 54% from the 3-point line like they did tonight, but just not playing down to your competition is just been such a challenge in this era of Bulls basketball, that if they can just find a way somehow, like as this team is constructed and together for now, like to not have the performances against the Hornets and Wizards, like there's just better basketball ahead. Look, they're 16-19 now. I'm guessing they're still 10th in the standings at the very moment. I believe that's what they were at going into the game. Yeah, they're 10th right now at this moment, 16-19. A game technically in the standings ahead because they've played 2 more games than the 76ers. So they're in the play-in tournament at this very moment. So you're at least there. And I think that's just kind of what we'll continue to watch for as this team is constructed, is where, like, because it is, we're in like the start of playoff-ish basketball. Like, this is why people say basketball really starts after December, after Christmas. Like, this is when the season really gets going, because you have the deadline right around the corner and you really figure out who these teams are. But I'll say it one more time tonight before we really talk. Like, take a break, and then we're really gonna, as much fun as this game was. I think it would be a shame to not do a lengthy conversation about the impact of Derrick Rose, some old man tweets that we saw during the game or before the game in response to the acknowledgement that his number is going to be retired and put into the rafters next year in 2025. I guess it could be 2026 actually when they do it technically. So in the 25-26 season. So we'll get into that next, but really, really good win for this team. Coby White, Zach LaVine, Vooch, Josh Giddey, like they all played really good basketball. Also, quick shout out, I haven't mentioned him enough yet. Not just the steal and the dunk. Julian Phillips, like that was a really good game for him too. He was kind of all over the place for this team. And as we got the report the other day that Modest and him are going down to the G League. They're going to be going up and down a little bit still as their minutes fluctuate. I think we saw a really good response from Julian Phillips. And that's one of those plays where, like, we've talked about the impact of Lonzo Ball, and I'm not going to give him the credit for that. But, like, those are plays that Lonzo makes, is where he sees the pass coming a mile away. He takes it, picks it off, and goes for the dunk. Like, that's what Julian Phillips did. So those are the little things that, like, the Bulls players, I think, are also picking up with just the surroundings that are happening around them and this team. So let's take a break here on the Locked On Bulls postcast. Let's talk about Derrick Rose. Derrick Rose night at United Center. Really cool night. A lot of people in attendance that were really important to people like me who are my age and really are too young for the Jordan era. So yes, if you're listening on audio or watching on YouTube later on, I apologize for how young I may sound in this next segment because, well, I wasn't alive when Jordan won his first championship. So let's talk about Derrick Rose night next year on the Locked On Bulls postcast on the Locked On Sports Chicago YouTube channel. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. One of my favorite memories was attending a concert last year. The energy and excitement was unforgettable. Also, a recent one, I took my son to his first basketball game, used Gametime to get those tickets. It was a blast. He's 3 years old. I don't know if he had any idea what was going on, but we had great seats thanks to Gametime. Gametime has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Gametime Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Like I said, just use those tickets. Just use Gametime to get tickets to a basketball game to take my son to his first professional basketball game. It was an incredible environment. He got a show at the end of the game because I live in Houston, so he got the night. It was the night of the fight between Amen Thompson and Tyler Hero, so he got a little bit of show at the end of the game. But you can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, so now that we've talked about the game itself, let's talk about Derrick Rose night. Derrick is obviously like the memories as a fan, like my favorite games I ever went to was like on election night in 2014? I guess it would have been 20. I can't remember what year it was. Where they played the Orlando Magic and we got in for like $6 because obviously everything was happening downtown with Obama. So like no one wanted to go to the game, and me and my buddies in college, like when we were at Columbia College, Chicago, and we were like, we're gonna go to the game tonight. Like we've done our business, we've done our duty. Let's go watch some basketball. One of my favorite games I've ever been to, just because it was such a weird night. It was kind of an empty stadium, but I didn't get to watch like the prime Jordan era. So like for me, like I grew up with the baby Bulls and kind of the disaster that was that, where like it was supposed to be the next generation of Bulls players that led them to the promised land, and Ben Gordon and all these guys were supposed to take the Bulls to new heights, and it flopped out. It didn't work. And then they get Derrick Rose. And that's to me like why a night like tonight, when they retire his jersey, for me is so important as a fan, because it's my like core memories as a basketball fan of watching what he did on the court. And it was so different, and stylistically was like so much fun to watch, like whether it's like watching on TV, watching in person, playing with them on like NBA 2K or NBA Live, like was always fun too, because like he was just so much faster than everyone on the court. And I think with Derrick, like what's the most important part, I think, for Derrick Rose, and like for like the old men who say like his number shouldn't be retired, because I saw that today from like one of the old clowns that are in the radio business, where like they're talking about how, well, you got to put all these other jerseys and numbers up because you've lowered the bar for what it's supposed to be. Well, no, you're wrong, because for my generation, for the generation who was born in the early 90s to mid 90s, like Derrick Rose is why we are Bulls fans. He's the reason why we suffer through bad basketball games now, because the hope is that the next Derrick Rose will be there, because no one has the next expectation that the next Michael Jordan's coming through the door. But like Derrick is the guy that like you can kind of replicate. You can replicate someone that can win MVP, can make All-Stars, that can take your team to the playoffs, that can battle in the playoffs. I mean, you think back to like the Boston series. I mean, hell, like the Phillies series like would have been totally different, obviously, if he didn't get hurt. But my favorite memory of Derrick Rose definitely goes back to the playoffs. It's in the Eastern Conference semifinals. It's the buzzer beater where he's got the infamous pose where he just like jumps into the arms of what I think it's Taj Gibson. That's my favorite like game memory. That's not a dunk. Obviously, the Goran Dragic dunk will like kind of live on, as Stacey King talked about on the broadcast tonight. Will like live on in infamy. That's gonna be like one of the most like famous plays I think for like we'll kind of ever see in basketball, just in terms of like how high he got up, like what his body did, how much he embarrassed Dragic on that play. It's one of the best dunks we'll see in our lifetime, in just terms of like straight up posters. So that one will always stand out for me. That and the buzzer beater, like I said, in the Eastern Conference semifinals, just two of my favorite moments for Derrick. And the other one, I think that my number 3 is a non-basketball moment. And I kind of forgot about it until during the game I was on Twitter and looking at it, and I don't remember what year it was. But it was one of the years he was of course, it was we're talking about an All-Star game here in a second. The introduction. Everyone knows what I'm talking about already, I think. But when LeBron and Dwight Howard and those guys are up there dancing, and then Derrick Rose is just like sitting there like stone-faced killer, looks like he has no interest in being on the stage. He's not dancing. When they introduce Derrick Rose from the Chicago Bulls, he just puts his hand up in the air and waves. That's D Rose, like 101. Like that is the funniest thing that he could have ever done, I think, in that moment. And to the conversation again about like, should his jersey be retired? It's such an easy yes, because while there are other guys who, yes, statistically may have accomplished more for the Bulls, that did more in the playoffs for the Bulls, yes, I get that. I think it's a lame argument. he's the youngest MVP in the NBA. You know, what he's done on the court for the fans, for the city, being from Chicago, it just elevates him to a level in which other guys don't touch him. Like, they just don't touch the vibe, the feel. And I think to what Stacey King and Neil Funk, which again, really cool to see Neil Funk on the broadcast tonight, like what they were talking about during this game was all the teammates that Brian Scalabrine flew in, had a game. You know, John Calipari flew in after getting his ass kicked. Apparently, I even looked at the score, but he said that during the broadcast when he was interviewed by Casey Johnson. The fact that Taj Gibson flew in after a game last night, leaving immediately after the game. You got Luol Deng flying in from overseas. You've got Joakim Noah there. Like, all these guys are coming in for Derek and celebrating him in a way that, like, it's so deserved. And I'm so glad that this finally happened. That, like, now that his career is done, that this moment has happened and that we get another one next year. Because even though they're milking it for what it's worth because of what the actual state of the team is, and, like, yes, they kind of butchered the Ring of Honor thing, obviously, with Jerry Krause's widow getting booed. That was not great, Bulls fans, but we'll get over it. But, yeah, everything. I mean, if you haven't seen the video yet, it's great. When they tell Derek that his number is going to be retired, that video going up today, he's in tears, and they're even joking around that, like, unless PJ is, you know, drafted by the Bulls at some point and wants to wear number 1, they're like, no one will ever wear number 1 again. I think the funniest thing from all of this was the quote from Taylor Horton Tucker before the game when he was talking about seeing Michael Carter Williams wear the number 1 when he was in high school at Simeon. And it's just like, what are you doing? It never should have been allowed. It never should have happened. And I'm glad that it never will be worn again unless PJ plays for the Bulls, who's also only in 6th grade. I thought he was way older than that. But they did like a private event at Simeon, pop-up shop, like just a bunch of really cool stuff. And Derek really, again, like he talked about it. If you heard any of the interviews he's been doing over the last couple of days, like he wanted to make this more about the fans and not about Derrick Rose. So, which is very Derrick Rose of him. So I'm glad he's going to get like his night next year when he gets his jersey retired. But just a really great night for the Bulls. Like, this is when there's a lot of bad going on, a lot of mediocre basketball, when you're 3 games below 500, to get this win over a really good team, to have Coby White, Zach LaVine play the way they did, and then to honor Derrick Rose. I just thought it was a really, really fun night of basketball and a really great environment in Chicago, and will be the highlight of the season without a doubt, from beginning to end. Everything that happened in the game, before the game, halftime, all of it was absolutely phenomenal. So that will do it for this episode of the Locked On Bulls postcast here on the Locked On Sports Chicago YouTube channel. Remember, hit that subscribe button if you're watching for the first time. If you're listening on audio, come on over. We go live after every single Bulls game, every Bears game. So tomorrow, Sunday the 5th, will be our last Bears game of the season. Thank you. We'll be here again on Thursday night after Notre Dame takes on Penn State, and then we'll be here after every single Cubs game when the baseball season gets around. So make sure you hit that subscribe button to YouTube, the Locked On Bulls YouTube channel, Locked On Sports Chicago YouTube channel, and of course the Locked On Bulls audio feed, where we drop the audio as soon as the show is over as well. So that will do it for us tonight. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Derrick Rose, for the memories and enjoyment and love of basketball that you implemented in people like me. And we will talk to you next time for hopefully another Bulls victory. So for now, peace.